Graph of y equals sine of x. So we want to use this x and y axis to draw the graph of y equals sine of x, and we're going to use the unit circle to help us. So what we're going to do is use the y values from the unit circle. So we want to start with our unit circle and label our y values. So in the point 1, 0, the 0 is the y value. In the point 0, minus 1, the y is the minus 1. In the point minus 1, 0, the 0 is the y. And in the point 0, 1, the 1 is the y. So what we do is we start at the easterly point, which is the point 1, 0, and we label this as 0 degrees. And then we move anti-clockwise to the point 0, 1, and we label that as 90 degrees. And we continue anti-clockwise to the point minus 1, 0, label this 180 degrees. And continue anti-clockwise to the point 0, minus 1, and label this 270 degrees. And then continue anti-clockwise back up to the point 1, 0, which we've already labelled as 0 degrees, and also label it as 360 degrees. Because remember, there's 360 degrees in a full circle. So our x-axis starts at 0 degrees, goes to 90, 180, 270, and 360 degrees. Now remember, the graph of y equals sine of x goes on forever in either direction. Next, we're going to label our y-axis. So the graph of y equals sine of x goes up as far as 1 and down as far as minus 1. So we have 1, 0, minus 1. So we let east be 0 degrees and we move anti-clockwise. So we started at the easterly point and we have 0 degrees to start off with, and we match that up with our y values, which is 0. So we're going to start at the point 0, 0. So I've just plotted the point 0, 0. We move anti-clockwise and we have 90 degrees as our x value and 1 as our y value. So we have 90 degrees for our x-axis, 1 for our y-axis, so we plot our point. We continue anti-clockwise and we get 180 degrees and 0. So 180 degrees on the x-axis, 0 on the y-axis, plot the point. Then we continue anti-clockwise and we get to 270 degrees and minus 1. So 270 degrees minus 1, plot our point, and continue along anti-clockwise and we get to 0 and 360 degrees. And we plot our point. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points plotted, and it's very important that we join these up with a curve. And now we have the graph of y equals sine of x. Very, very important, we do not want a point at the top here, and we do not want a point at the bottom. It has to be a curve. So this is the graph of y equals sine of x from 0 degrees up as far as 360 degrees. And this shape just repeats itself continuously, and it goes on to infinity. So this is how we draw the graph of y equals sine of x using the unit circle. So what we did was we took our degrees, 0, 90, 180, 270 and 360, and we matched them up with the y values on the unit circle. If we want to draw the graph of y equals cos of x, we would match them up with the x values on the unit circle. So instead of using 0 for 0 degrees, we would have matched it up with 1. Instead of using 1 for 90 degrees, we would have matched it up with 0. Instead of using 0 for 180 degrees, we would have matched it up with minus 1. And instead of using minus 1 for 270 degrees, we would have matched it up with 0, and so on. So this is the graph of y equals sine of x using the unit circle. Now we're going to draw the graph of y equals sine of x using our trigonometric ratios of certain angles, which is given to us in the formula tables. So we're interested in sine of A. So we need to label our y-axis as 1 and minus 1. So we have 0, 1 and minus 1. So go to 0 degrees on the x-axis and 0 on the y-axis. Next we go to 90 degrees on the x-axis, 1 on the y-axis, and plot the point. Next we go to 180 degrees on the x-axis, 0 on the y-axis, plot the point. Next we go to 270 degrees on the x-axis, minus 1 on the y-axis, and we plot our point. Now we can also go to 30 degrees on the x-axis and a half. So if this is 0 degrees and this is 90 degrees, then this must be 30 degrees. And this would be a half because this is halfway between 0 and 1. So we can plot our point there. And then we just have to join our points together, making sure that we have a curve. And again, here we have the graph of y equals sine of x. So now, again, we're going to graph y equals sine of x. But instead of using degrees, we're going to use radians. So instead of 90 degrees, we have pi over 2. Instead of 180 degrees, we have pi. Instead of 270 degrees, we have 3 pi over 2. And instead of 360 degrees, we have 2 pi. So it's important to note that pi is equal to 180 degrees. And since 90 degrees is half of 180 degrees, then pi over 2 must be equal to 90 degrees. 180 degrees plus 180 degrees is 360 degrees. So pi plus pi is going to be 2 pi. And if 90 degrees equals pi over 2, and 270 divided by 90 is 3, then 3 pi over 2 will give us 270 degrees. So again, we're going to use the y values from the unit circle. And again, we start at the easterly point, and we're going to label that as 0. Then we move anti-clockwise to what would be 90 degrees, and we label that as pi over 2. And then we go anti-clockwise to what would be 180 degrees, and we label that as pi. And we go anti-clockwise to what would be 270 degrees, and label that as 3 pi over 2. And then we continue anti-clockwise back around to 0, and we also label that as 2 pi. Because we know 2 pi is equal to 360 degrees. So next we label our y-axis. We go up as far as 1 and down as far as -1. Next we plot our points. So we start in the east at 0 and we move anti-clockwise. And we're using our y values for y equals sine of x. So we have 0, 0. We move anti-clockwise and we get to pi over 2 and 1. Move anti-clockwise, we get to pi and 0. Move anti-clockwise, we get to 3 pi over 2 and -1. And we continue anti-clockwise and we get to 2 pi and 0. When we have our points plotted, we join them together with a curve. And again, we have the graph of y equals sine of x. So again, we're going to draw the graph of y equals sine of x using our trigonometric ratios of certain angles. And again, this time we're using radians for our x-axis. So we're going to go to sine of A. So we also have to label our y-axis, go up as far as 1 and down as far as -1. So we start at 0 in our radians axis and 0 on our y-axis. Then we go to pi over 2 on our x-axis, 1 on the y-axis. Then pi on the x-axis, 0 on the y-axis. Then 3 pi over 2 on the x-axis, -1 on the y-axis. And again, we don't have 2 pi on our radians row of values, but we do know that 2 pi is equal to 360 degrees, and 360 degrees is in the same position as 0 degrees. So we go to 2 pi and 0. Now we have our points plotted, we join them together with a curve. And now again we have the graph of y equals sine of x. From 0 up as far as 2 pi.